Hello and welcome back to another sit-down video. I know it's been a long time since I sat down and actually filmed something, but we are back around a year later, I think, and we will be doing another book wrap up, and this will be all the books I read in 2024. There's obviously a bit more than this. I just read a lot of books from the library this year and also audiobooks, so physical books there's not as many as there were last year. Also, today is Christmas, so Merry Christmas to you guys. I hope you guys had a great holiday with friends, family, and I hope you're staying warm. I didn't read too many good books this year, so I feel like I'm not gonna be as positive when it comes to my reviews in this video as I was in the previous book wrap up. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So first book that I read obviously was Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White by Amelie Wen Zhao. I started 2023 with the first book of the series, which was Song of Silver Flame Like Night, which I really loved last year. So since this book is a sequel, like I mentioned, it continues the story of Song, and you really see where the characters get to and what happens in the plot and how the story really ends, as it is a duology. So needless to say, I really enjoyed this book. There was a major plot point that I think they hinted at a lot, so I thought that that was kind of anticlimactic for me once it was really revealed, but that didn't really take away anything from the story for me. So I thought that that coming to light really made things clearer, and you're like, okay, this is for sure. There's also a thing that Lan and Zen are searching for in this book, and when you find out that it's one thing and not the other, that really surprised me. Not trying to spoil too much, but I just thought that it kind of reminded me of Baldur's Gate. I'm playing Baldur's Gate right now, and there's a certain thing that you think is one thing and then it's not, and then, you know, it changes your view on what you're supposed to actually do with it. So in this book, we have our returning characters like Lan, Zen, Chotai, and Shanjun, who are the big four for me. I adore them, I love them. And you really see how they develop as characters individually and also how they develop in their relationships with each other. So if you read the first book, you know that some characters left off on rockier terms than the others, but this book really brought everything to a nice close, I feel like, and there weren't really any loose ends. I thought that everything was tied up really well and characters got the endings that they deserved. They did introduce a prince-like character, and I did not really believe anything he said at all. I knew that he was not telling the entire truth when he was talking to the others, so anything he did, I was not that surprised personally. But yeah, that new character that gets introduced, he's very vital to the plot, and he really plays a key role in what Lan and Zen are looking for and the goal that they are striving towards. And in this book, we also get more information about the Imperial family and their style of practicing, as each family has a certain type that they specialize in. So learning that they could even practice that type of magic was really interesting. But yeah, without spoiling too much, there are some characters I feel like who are more death-coded than the others. So you do get that in here. I love that the author really stuck with what matched that character and didn't try to give them an ending that didn't make sense. And the relationship between Lan and Zen, obviously, it's great. They are my faves. I adore them. I love them. You know, overall, it's a good book. You do get interesting dynamics between characters that didn't interact with each other too much. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book. I am glad that this started off my year and really set the tone for everything. I would highly recommend it. And I think when it comes to favorite characters in this book, I would say that Lan and Zen are my two favorites still, but there's something about Zen and how his character developed throughout this entire plot line that I really like. He just has a special place in my heart, I feel. Introduce the next book, which is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. The only reason I read this book was because I really want to read Infernal Devices, so like the Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Princess, you know, that trilogy. But I was never really sure if we were supposed to read it in order. Personally, I do like to read things in order just to know the previous lore and the whole storyline. But after I read that, I just did not enjoy it at all. And I think now that I'm older, it's not something that resonates with me. If only I had read that when I was like 13, maybe I would have gone to experience it and enjoy it a little bit more. I don't have much to say about the plot, just that it wasn't my cup of tea. And maybe I will just skip and read that trilogy and experience that instead of trying to suffer through the entire series. And on a brighter note, let's introduce the next book, which is The Deep Sky by Yume Kitase. This one was really, I think, my introduction into sci-fi books. This is a very, space-filled. The characters live in space. It's a very feminist book, I feel. The entire cast are women and femmes and non-binary. So this book follows our main character, Asuka. It is told in a dual timeline, so you're getting Asuka's life in the current day, and then you also get her past and how she grew up and how she came to become a member of this crew and her relationship with her parents. So I think this book really resonated with me as an immigrant daughter. I think the conversations that Asuka had with her mom felt super personal and real. So yeah, immigrant daughters, Asian daughters, I feel like you will really resonate with the things that she experiences and the conversations that she and her mother and her father and her family have. With Asuka's storyline, the author also explores Asuka's dual identity. So she is half Japanese and half American. So with her being half Japanese, half American, she's really at a conflict of, do I go to space for Japan or do I represent America? And seeing her work so hard and seeing her try so hard to get at this dream of hers was really inspiring, and she experienced a lot of hardships. Like, this was not easy for her. She was literally the extra person, like the person who is just there to fill in and not really play an important role in the whole mission. And more about the whole having immigrant parents and how it is to live with them and grow with them. You do see Asuka try to fix things with her mom, and if you're Asian, you will understand like the arguments that they use against you. Let me actually show you guys the map of the ship. I love when books include a diagram or a map of where the characters are. So we have this diagram, and then we also have this one. So when they're describing stuff, the entire ship kind of goes in a circle. A lot of characters do jog along there and exercise and get their steps in. And on the ship that they stay on, there is an AI that kind of encompasses the whole ship, and it assists each of the crew members. So there was a clue that the AI left for Asuka that was very subtle but really was personal to her that you can easily miss, but it was really smart, and I really love when they revealed that. And as our main character, she is just so good at everything. Like, she really has a lot of self-doubts and she doesn't feel as confident in things, mainly because she was picked last. She didn't really have a lot of support growing up from her family or her peers, but when she's under pressure, she works so well. And as far as favorite characters go, I love Yingyue. She is my wife. I love her. She was super pregnant with twins, and she still put the crew first. She did everything. She ate, she slayed, she did that. I do think the main culprit of this all didn't really have a good enough reason to do what they did. Yeah, I don't know if it was that serious, but overall, this book, the ending, I really loved. I would say it's a happy ending, so would recommend this book, but prepare to feel a lot of emotions if you are a daughter, a person of color, and an Asian person. And continuing on with the sci-fi vibes, I next read Flux by Jinwoo Chung. This one was a speculative fiction book, which I haven't really delved into when it comes to my reading. This book is one of those where you really have to pay attention and kind of keep up with everything that's being told to you. You do see our main character point of view, and then it switches to a more TV style. You have to pay attention to those two and try to connect them. But I will say, once this book gets to a certain point, you're like, okay, not everything's clicking, everything makes sense, and I'm just like so amazed with it. In addition to Brandon, you also get characters Bo and Blue. So you kind of learn how their lives intersect and how they play a role in the whole grand scheme of things. And with our main characters, they experience a lot of trauma. You also get a lot of like Asian struggles in the story. So if you're an Asian person, again, you will really relate to the feelings that the main characters express and their regrets in life. It's a lot of emotions altogether. Also, the Bai Pan Rep of our main characters. I love that as a bisexual person. That is just so good to see, and I think it was really represented well. So this book is sci-fi, as I mentioned. It is also time travel. Like there's a micro trope of time travel, which is very trippy, as you can imagine. And yeah, with time travel, you know, there has to be a big plot point where you go back and change the past, even though it'll change how everything currently is. So seeing how the main characters navigate through that and their thought process on whether they should go through with it, I was having sweaty palms. I was just, you know, nervous to see where things would go. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. It made me bawl and cry a lot and feel many emotions, but it was a trip. It was a good trip, and I'm glad that this was part of my reading this year. And to the next book, I have Gorgeous Gruesome Faces by Linda Chang. I think I had two different of expectations for it. I was kind of thinking that it was a murder mystery and kind of a whodunit, but a little bit minor and in a high school setting. So in the beginning, it really did start off with those vibes. I felt the suspense. I felt the horror of things that were happening to these characters and who could have done this and who would think to harm this person. But as it went on, I think that there's an aspect that was introduced that I just did not really enjoy. Like honestly, if I knew that this book had this aspect, I would not have read it at all. Not that it's anything bad, it just didn't go with the story, I feel like, and it just came out of nowhere in my opinion. And the pacing of this book, it's slow, I would say. You see things happen to other characters, and you see our main character Sunny trying to make things clear and make sense of everything, but I feel like she doesn't really get anywhere. She has all these clues, she's working towards it, but I don't think she learns anything new for a long time. This book does have a sapphic romance, which was what initially drew me to it. Although the romance isn't the main focus, I feel like it was leagues better than what I personally experienced in the plot. I also didn't mind the dual POV with Sunny. The Gen Z slang didn't really turn me off too much, but I think at points it was just a bunch of buzzwords thrown in just to seem young and seem very in the know. Overall, not a murder survival story as I expected. Maybe I was misled and I completely made up that in my mind, but not a book that I would personally recommend. And now we're moving on to an Asian fantasy book, which is also my first arc of the year, and that is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. This one I have many thoughts about. I do think this was very ambitious for a debut, and I thought the plot was really interesting, like how Ru Ying, our main character's people, were more traditional and relied on magic, while, you know, the more westernized people were very into technology and engineering and science. I think now that I've had time to really process the book, I do think that Ru Ying as a main character, she plays the role of an unreliable narrator. So you're kind of like going through it and seeing what she believes. But I think even as an unreliable narrator, you kind of see where she's going wrong, but you can't really do anything about it since you're just reading it. Personally, I think her decisions went on for way too long. People were in her ear like telling her, oh, you know, this isn't right, or you should reconsider this, but she still went along with it. And her relationship with Anthony, the guy from the opposing faction, it kind of made me uncomfortable. I know that's the point, but I'm just like, he did so many heinous things, but it took one specific thing that was personal to Ru Ying for her to really turn against him and kind of question where he was coming from. The romance scenes in this made me ill, which I think was also the point. I also think writing-wise, this book did a lot more telling than showing when it comes to at least the beginning of it. And with a world that's so filled with magic and technology, you think that more description would be given so you can get a clearer picture of the surroundings and the characters. But we didn't really get that in this, I feel. There is a character in this book named Bai Hu, who I love. His entire plotline in this book I thought was perfect. It was perfect. And also this book is told in first person point of view, which I don't really mind. It's not my favorite, but I don't have a problem with it. I just thought that with first person point of view, Ru Ying's feelings could have been explored a bit more. It was more her thinking about things not too deeply and her making decisions. It wasn't really, oh, this could be bad, what about this. But yeah, although I didn't personally enjoy this as much, I do think that the next few books in the series might change my mind about it. I do have high hopes for it, so I think I will pick up the second book once that comes out. in a book that I think many people read within the last year, which is This Is How You Lose the Time War. I actually read this as an audiobook, which I kind of regret because my attention span isn't that good. So I don't think that I got the full experience that I would have if I just had read the book physically. But I think, like other people, I also was inspired by a tweet that talked about this book, so that's why I opted to read it finally. But essentially, this book is told with two point of views. So you're getting the point of view of our two characters, Red and Blue, and the story is told with letters between the two characters, and they're basically fighting a war, and the war takes place in different spaces of time. So one character is in the past and one's in the future. They're writing to each other, and at a point it kind of gets to a flirtatious, and you get a sense of yearning, and these characters grow close to each other, and it's like the most heartbreaking thing ever. I think the two authors writing one character respectively really was a strong point because you're getting a different voice for each character. I think it just makes the story feel a lot more natural. Their voices are very distinct. This is also a sapphic romance, which you guys know I love. With sapphic romances, you really get a sense of yearning, and I feel like it hurts a lot more than other romances. This book is very lyrical and poetic. When you're reading the letters, you're just like, I would fall in love if this were written and sent to me. I just really love that. I love that you can sense the characters' feelings towards each other through these letters and through how they write and how they are portraying their feelings to the other. And even though you're getting the letters and you're hearing the characters talking in first person, they do state the climate of the world and the war and how things are currently going. So you can imagine and picture in your mind like that world and the state of everything. In between Blue's world, which is more, it's called Garden, and Red's world, which is Agency, you really feel like a child of divorce. You're in the middle of this, like your parents are fighting and they're trying to make things right with their side, but then they also care about each other, and it's just like, it's a lot. I do think there's like a heavy feeling in your heart as you read this book. There's a lot of emotions, and you're just looking at the end and you know that things will end happily for both of these characters, but you don't know how it'll end for them each individually. So you just gotta keep with it and just see where it goes from there. And I do think this book has a lot of reread value, since after you know what happens, you can go back and see, oh, I missed this or I missed this, and now I understand this part a lot more than I did originally. I would recommend this book. It's a short read, so it should not take too long to really get into it. We got a couple of more. So next book I read was I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, which I think I kind of read because I saw that RM from BTS really recommended it. Now I understand that therapy might work differently in other countries compared to here in the US, but I think the therapist in the story was a little harsh when it came to giving advice and pointing out behaviors and trying to correct those behaviors. In the book overall, I think was more like transcripts of the author's therapy sessions. I think if the book was just a memoir and not a self-help book, that would have really helped it. But yeah, it is a memoir, so it isn't something that I really want to rate or judge too harshly. It was probably just a difference of how therapy works in other countries that I'm not personally used to. It is worth a read if you want to see that perspective and see how mental health and therapy works in another country. And we have another sci-fi book coming up, which is Ocean's Kotori by Elaine Yu Cho. This one was my most anticipated read of the year, and unfortunately it did not land the way that I expected it to land. I think the setting of it all, like how Korea is top in the space game, and things with the Alliance and the Sunbi Embassy and our three characters and the crew and everything, I think that there was much to be desired. The setting was gorgeous. The world building, I think, was very well thought out and very well presented. But plot-wise, there wasn't really much. It felt a lot more character-driven, which I don't think is bad or anything. I just don't think that there was enough plot to make me really care about many of the characters and want them to succeed in their endeavors. So yeah, after I read this, I was really sad that I did not enjoy it at all, and I just wish that I did because the cover is gorgeous. The main characters, I will say, are very lovable. Like Ocean and Haven and Teo, they are great. I love them. And like the beginning of this book and how each main character was introduced was really great. I thought that was very strong, and I just love that trio. And between Ocean and Teo, their friendship and how close they are together, I think that was really nice to see. How much they care about each other and how much they always have each other's backs, even if they're far apart or even if they're on different crews. Like, their friendship was really great to see and how comfortable they are with each other. Now, with Ocean and Haven, I was internally screaming because, you know, there's just something about my shoujo heart. It wasn't very shoujo-esque how the romance went. It does have those moments where you're like, oh, that's kind of, you know, that hits me pretty hard. And Teo, I do really love Teo. He is the artistic boy who was forced to do something more useful, take a career in space. And as an artistic person who pursued art as a career, I relate to that a lot. So I think when we get into technical aspects of the book, this book was very broad when it came to the genre. Like, it is sci-fi, but it also tried to be a lot of other things, which I feel like didn't really balance out when it came to the overall story and how all of these actually played into the plot. And I thought the end was very unsatisfying, unfortunately. I know that it's going to be a duology, but the ending wasn't really an ending at all. It just kind of cut off, I feel. But I will say a positive point in this book is how death is portrayed. The dead are very honored and respected, and through the funeral processions that take place, you see how each culture does their honoring of the dead. And I think with many like adventure books and action stories, you don't really get to see the downside of what if characters die. Like, do you hold a funeral for them? Do you bury them? Do you just leave them and go about the main plot? So seeing them actually stop and take time to honor those who have passed away was really nice to see. We do get a group of raiders who join the cast of characters, but honestly, I didn't really feel anything towards them. I feel like they didn't really make that big of an impression on me to the point where I'm like, oh, I want to see more of these characters. I haven't decided whether I want to read the second book, but we will see. There's still time to think about it. And for our last book of this reading wrap-up, it is A Dark and Drowning Tide by Allison Saft. I have been wanting to read Allison Saft's books for a really long time. I just haven't had the chance to really pick them up and read them, but I got this one as an ARC. It was an ARC that I kind of forgot that I was accepted to get. I loved it so much. I think this really redeemed the whole year for me. Like, if I ended the year off with another book that I didn't enjoy, I would have put myself in an even deeper reading slump, I feel. So as this is my first exposure to Allison Saft's writing, I really find her writing to be very poetic, and you're just so immersed in the world, and the language that she uses is so captivating, and you feel like you're really in that world yourself. And the yearning between our two characters, I love that so much. This is another sapphic read, so that also really drew me towards it. Needless to say, I did highlight a lot of prose as I was reading. I just love everything that was written and how things were said. So in this book, we follow our main character, Lorelei. She has a goal she wants to achieve, to be more free and unbound and not really seen for her identity and the prejudice that her people face. Lorelei and a group of other colleagues, they are tasked with finding the Earthsprung, which is kind of a body of water that is said to grant you immense power if you find it. So she and 5 others and her mentor go on this journey by boat, but as they're on the trip, her mentor gets murdered. Lorelei is kind of put in charge as she was the mentee, and she tries to solve this murder. But along the way, she kind of finds out the truth about her mentor and the truth about everything, and she learns more about the people that she's traveling with. The only person that Lorelei can really trust is Sylvia, who is her academic rival. Things spark between them, and you really get to see that. I love that Lorelei as a character, she was not someone who was very agreeable. She would just do things as she did. She would say things as it was. She didn't really care about the superficial stuff and trying to make favors with people. And Lorelei, she is incredibly smart. She is very brave, I think. She stood up to a lot of people. I really like that she had a backbone and she stood up even if that was to put herself in danger. And I know I don't really have to say this, but I think she was the perfect character to follow along this journey because her personality really took charge of the situation. Now when it comes to our other main character, Sylvia, I adore her. She is the best. I have so many good things to say about her. I just thought that even though she was like a more soft and feminine person, she's so kind, but she is very brave. There are a lot of fae and mystical beings that other people are afraid of, but she's not really afraid of them. She'll go up to them, she'll help them, she'll try to understand them and make them feel most comfortable. And although Sylvia, she's a very by-the-book person, like she'll do things as people have always done them. Even if people disagreed, even if people said that those methods were outdated, she would just move on and do them as she wanted to, even if other people disapproved. So I really love that about her. And with Lorelai and Sylvia being our two main characters, I think that they both filled in the gaps of each other. So what one character didn't have, the other did have. So their dynamic was very interesting to see. And I love how they meshed together, even if they were seemingly very different at first. I also think the romance trope was actually very good academic rivals to lovers. And when you're learning about the murder, there is a lot of tension as Sylvia and Lorelai are trying to trust each other and trying to believe that the other is not the murderer. You're getting that pressure, but you're also getting moments in between where they start to feel things for each other, but they don't want to overstep, or they don't want to make a big deal out of things that might not be reciprocated. And honestly, the softness between both of them and how their relationship progressed, I felt such a warm feeling in my heart, and I really love that and how the author wrote that. And honestly, I think that a lot of characters in this book also got the ending they deserved. That includes people like Johan and Adelaide. I feel like they all got the ending that they needed and the ending that they were meant to have. Now, when it comes to our characters of the five, so we have Lorelai and her mentor Ziegler, but we also have what they call the Rudeberg Five. So that would be Sylvia, Johan, Heikel, Ludwig, and Adelaide. And they're all childhood friends. They grew up together. As you grow up, things change, and who you were close to when you were younger, they're different now, and you're not kids anymore. So honestly, it was sad to see them all grow apart and differ from each other now that they're older and they understand the world and their role in everything. And the folklore in this book, I'm not like super familiar with it, so there were things I had to Google and look up, which led me down a lot of rabbit hole searches. It was nice and different, and I think I got to see a different world that I wasn't really used to seeing in media. I think the addition of magic was also a nice touch to it. It wasn't really the main focus, but when it came to a point where they needed that, it really came in handy. They find out things that they never thought could be true, and at that point you kind of have to see whether you want to be stuck in this place and try to make sense of it, or just accept the information as it is and move on with your life. So overall, I would say this is my favorite read of the year. It was a good balance of mystery and fantasy and romance, so I would highly recommend this book. I just love it, and I'm glad that I ended the year with this book. And those are all the books that I read in 2024. Obviously, these are just the physical ones that I have. Overall, I wouldn't say it's the best reading year that I've had. Not that I've had many super lengthy reading years so far, but I hope that 2025 is a better reading year for me, and I will be better at picking books that I will actually enjoy. Thank you guys for watching this video again. I really appreciate it. I am hoping to do more videos other than vlogs. So stay tuned for more sit-down videos. I will get used to talking in front of the camera like this and setting up all these lights and everything. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!